I had no business being here. But when Kyle suggested exploring the cave, I couldn't say no. It was supposed to be an adventure, a break from the monotony, just the two of us, headlamps strapped on, flashlights cutting through the darkness as we descended into the cavern's gaping mouth. Rumors said this cave was untouched, never fully explored, and we thought that was enough of an invitation. The first stretch felt almost peaceful, the silence hanging thick and still. Our footsteps echoed, every scuff and scrape magnified in the close quarters, bouncing off the walls as we moved deeper. The stone was damp, slick beneath my fingertips as I trailed my hand along the wall. A faint, earthy scent clung to the air, mingling with the tang of metal that reminded me of old blood. But as we ventured further, the air seemed to shift. The passageways grew narrower, twisting, forcing us to sidestep and squeeze through jagged openings. Shadows crept closer, thicker, as if the darkness was pressing in on us. And then the sounds began. At first it was faint, barely noticeable. A whisper, like someone murmuring my name from a few feet away. I almost didn't register it, blaming the cave's strange acoustics, the way sound ricocheted unpredictably. But when it happened again, clearer this time, a soft, insistent voice saying my name, an uneasy chill prickled the back of my neck. I glanced at Kyle, trying to shake off the feeling. Did you hear that? I whispered, the words barely leaving my lips. He turned, his flashlight casting deep shadows over his face, making his eyes look hollow. Hear what? That voice? I muttered, suddenly aware of how ridiculous it sounded. It keeps saying my name. Kyle shook his head, giving a quick, uneasy laugh that sounded more like he was trying to reassure himself than me. Probably just the wind, or, I don't know, echoes. This place does weird things with sound. But his eyes were darting around, searching the shadows, and I could tell he didn't believe his own explanation. Then, from somewhere further in, there was a faint scraping noise. It slithered through the silence, setting my nerves on edge, like nails dragging against the stone, deliberate and unhurried. I glanced at Kyle, and this time, he didn't need to say anything. I could see it in his face. He'd heard it, too. We stood frozen, listening, every muscle tensed. But before either of us could react, the whisper came again, closer, brushing against my ear as if someone was standing right beside me, my name coiling around me like a cold breath. I whipped around, my flashlight beam jerking wildly over the walls. The shadows danced and leaped, but there was nothing there, just stone and darkness. My pulse thundered in my ears, a hollow, frantic rhythm that drowned out all reason. Kyle, I muttered, my voice cracking, maybe we should go back. But as I turned to him, my flashlight catching his silhouette, I realized he was gone. Kyle? I called, louder this time, panic clawing its way up my throat. My voice echoed back at me, distorted, twisted, as if the cave was mocking me. There was no answer. The darkness around me felt heavier, thicker, pressing in like it wanted to swallow me whole. And then, from somewhere deep in the cave, I heard it, my own voice calling his name. Kyle? Kyle, are you there? The words bounced back, warped and hollow, layering over themselves until it sounded like a chorus of voices, all saying the same thing. The air grew colder, and my breath misted in front of me, curling into the darkness. My skin prickled, every instinct screaming that something was terribly wrong. I spun, hoping for any glimpse of him, but the passage had changed. It was narrower, unfamiliar, as though the cave itself was shifting, closing off my escape. I forced myself forward, my movements jerky and desperate, each step echoing as though something unseen was following me, just a step behind. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, methodical, coming from behind me. Heavy, dragging. They didn't sound like Kyle's. There was something off, something wrong about them. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to steady my breathing, trying to stay quiet, hoping whatever was following me wouldn't notice. The footsteps stopped. I felt a prickle of dread, the hairs on my neck standing on end. And then, just beside my ear, a voice whispered, low and mocking, "Turn around." My heart seized, every nerve on fire, as I forced myself to look. I turned, flashlight shaking in my hand, the beam cutting through the darkness. At first, there was only the thick blackness swallowing the light. But then, a shape began to emerge from the shadows. It was almost human. Almost. Its limbs were elongated, too thin, twisted in ways that made my stomach churn. Its skin was a mottled gray, like stone and shadow fused together, blending seamlessly with the cave walls. And its face, or what should have been its face, was nothing more than a smooth expanse of darkness. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic bursts of light, and in one of those flickers, I saw its eyes. Hollow, empty sockets that bore into me, filled with an unnatural hunger. It cocked its head as though studying me, and opened its mouth in a grotesque grin that stretched wider than any human mouth should. From that void came a low, grating sound, like rocks scraping together, reverberating in my bones. And then, in a voice that sounded like mine, it spoke. "Why did you come here?" My body was frozen, my mind screaming at me to run, but I couldn't move. It reached out, a long, skeletal hand brushing against my shoulder. Its touch was icy, penetrating my skin, filling me with a hollow, bone-deep ache. It was like it was pulling something out of me, something intangible, like it was draining me. I felt myself slipping, my vision blurring, thoughts scattering as the voices around me grew louder, swirling, calling something from deep inside me, something I didn't even know was there. "Go back," the thing murmured, its voice layered with mine, twisted and wrong. "Leave while you can. This place remembers." My limbs obeyed before my mind caught up, and I staggered backward, breaking free of its grasp. I turned and ran, the whispers chasing me, growing louder, more insistent, filling the cave with a cacophony of voices that all knew my name. My heart thundered, my breath coming in shallow gasps as I stumbled through the dark. I finally burst into a wider cavern, gasping for air, my flashlight swinging wildly. But as the light steadied, I saw Kyle, standing at the far end of the cavern, his flashlight dim, his face blank and distant. "Kyle?" I called, my voice trembling, desperate. He looked at me, his gaze unfocused, empty. When he opened his mouth, the voice that came out wasn't his own. "You shouldn't have come here."